October 10, 1957. A fire burns inside a nuclear reactor for 3 days. And almost nobody, outside a locked room, knows it's happening. A cloud of radioactive smoke drifts silently over the English countryside, over farms, over schools, over families eating breakfast with their windows open. No sirens, no warnings, no evacuation. Milk from over 500 square kilometers of countryside is quietly poured into rivers, dumped in the dead of night, while the public is told everything is fine. And then, the report, the one document that could explain exactly what happened, exactly who was responsible, and exactly how much danger the public had been in, is seized by the government, rewritten and sealed, locked away for 32 years. Not lost. Not misplaced. Buried, on purpose, by the people who were supposed to protect the truth. Workers who witnessed the fire were told, in no uncertain terms, to never speak of it again. Some kept that silence for the rest of their lives. So what really happened inside that reactor? Who decided the public didn't deserve to know? And what did they erase forever? To understand what was buried, you have to understand what Britain was racing to build. It's the height of the Cold War. Britain wants nuclear weapons, and it wants them fast, faster than caution would normally allow. On the remote coast of Cumbria, in a place called Windscale, engineers built 2 reactors at breakneck speed, designed to produce plutonium for bombs. These weren't ordinary power plants. They were experimental, rushed, and pushed far beyond what their original design ever intended, because the government needed a bomb before its rivals did. The workers who ran Windscale weren't told the full risks. Safety systems that should have caught a rising problem were incomplete or ignored. In the name of speed, behind the concrete walls, temperatures were creeping upward in ways no one fully understood. On October 7, 1957, technicians noticed something wrong. A strange, unexplained temperature rise inside pile number 1. They assumed it was a sensor error. It wasn't. By October 10th, the truth became impossible to ignore. The reactor's uranium fuel had ignited. A fire was burning inside a nuclear pile, in the heart of Britain's atomic weapons program, and no one had ever fought a fire like this before. Firefighters didn't know if water would extinguish the flames, or trigger something far worse. For hours, senior staff debated whether pouring water onto the burning reactor could cause an explosion capable of contaminating half of northern England. They chose to act anyway. What they didn't know yet was that the fire had already been burning for 3 full days before anyone outside that control room understood how close Britain had come to catastrophe. When water was finally poured onto the burning core, it worked. But only just. The fire went out on October 12th, after burning for 3 days inside a nuclear reactor with no precedent, no manual, and no guarantee of survival. By then, radioactive iodine-131 had already escaped into the atmosphere, drifting over dairy farms across Cumbria and beyond. Government scientists quietly began testing local milk. The results were alarming enough that officials ordered milk from an area of over 500 square kilometers destroyed, poured away, out of public view for weeks. Here is the moment that redefines everything. Internal estimates would later suggest the radioactive release could be linked to dozens of additional cancer cases in the surrounding population, numbers the public would not learn for decades. Prime Minister Harold Macmillan was told the full findings almost immediately, and he made a choice. Rather than release the official inquiry, he ordered it rewritten, a heavily redacted version, stripped of the most damning details about design flaws and rushed safety corners, was the only version the public would ever see. The original, uncensored report was locked in government archives under strict secrecy. Not for 5 years, not for 10, for 32 years. Workers inside the plant were instructed, directly, not to discuss what they'd witnessed, not with journalists, not with neighbors, not even with their own families. Several of them carried that silence into old age, some never speaking of it before they died. Why? Because admitting the full truth meant admitting that Britain's nuclear weapons ambitions had been built on a foundation of rushed decisions and hidden danger, and that a government meant to protect its people had instead protected itself first. The full, unredacted 1957 report was not released to the public until 1988, 32 years after the fire. An entire generation lived, worked, and raised children near Windscale without ever knowing the true scale of what had happened beneath their feet. When the unredacted report finally surfaced in 1988, it confirmed what many had long suspected: the fire was more severe, the radioactive release more significant, and the original cover-up more deliberate than the government had ever admitted. No government official was ever prosecuted. No one lost their position over the decision to seal the truth for 3 decades. The plant itself wasn't shut down forever. It was renamed. Windscale became Sellafield, a name the public would come to know for entirely different reasons in the years that followed. The workers who witnessed the fire and who followed orders to stay silent received no formal acknowledgement for the burden they carried. Families in Cumbria who may have been affected by the radioactive release were left, for decades, without the information they needed to even ask the right questions about their own health. This matters today because Windscale became the blueprint for how governments manage nuclear disasters, a blueprint studied, consciously or not, in the response to Chernobyl in 1986 and Fukushima in 2011. The instinct to control information first and inform the public second didn't start with those disasters. It started here, in the English countryside, in 1957. Every time a government today weighs national security against a community right to know what's in their air, their water, their milk, Windscale is the ghost standing in that room. The silence, forced onto ordinary workers, echoes into every modern debate about nuclear transparency. The truth wasn't destroyed. It was simply postponed, buried until the people who could have been held responsible were long retired or gone. Windscale teaches us something uncomfortable about power, that the instinct to protect an institution will almost always outrun the instinct to protect the people that institution was built to serve. Secrecy doesn't erase danger. It only delays the moment someone has to answer for it. And in that delay, entire communities live without the truth they were owed. Somewhere, right now, there may be another report sitting in another sealed drawer, waiting 30 more years to see daylight. That's the quiet, terrifying thought Windscale leaves behind. So we have to ask ourselves, how many more fires have already been put out and buried before we ever learned they were burning? If this story shook you the way it shook us to research it, tell us what you think really gets hidden in the name of national security. And if you want more buried history dragged back into the light, you know what to do.